Listen, Mark, it's not what you think. Her voice echoed in my ears, but I was beyond listening. Beth stood before me, holding the keys to another man's car, while behind her loomed Brian, the smug, self-satisfied jerk who had dared to shatter my world. My gaze shifted from her face to his arrogant smirk igniting a fire of hatred within me. Just a fun night at a party, right, Beth? That's what you call this? I felt my heart shattering into pieces, a cacophony of emotions raging within me. It's just a little fun, she protested, but there was fear glistening in her eyes. You're overreacting, Mark. Just a little fun? I asked, my voice low but steady, gathering every ounce of resolve. You cheated on me, Beth. This isn't just a game, you ruined everything. It was just one night, Mark. I thought it would be harmless. She smiled, but I could see the cracks in her facade. I stood there, on the precipice of the most harrowing moment of my life, grappling with the betrayal that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. You don't understand what this could do for us. I just wanted to feel alive again. Alive? I spat, anguish coursing through me. You're alive, but I'm dead inside. I'm here, listening to your crazy excuses while you've been with someone else. Just then, my phone buzzed, displaying an unknown number. I answered, still locked in a stare with Beth. You'd better accept this situation, cuckold. Your wife is mine now, and if your life means anything to you, you better stay out of my way. A male voice declared coldly from the other end. Those words sent a chill through me, igniting a fury that surged in my veins. I turned sharply to Brian, fire in my eyes. You think I'm just going to walk away from this? Your wife belongs to me now, and I'm perfectly okay with that, he retorted, his smirk widening. The air was thick with tension, the reality of my situation crashing over me like a tidal wave. In that moment I decided I wouldn't back down. I'd make sure that bastard understood the consequences of his actions, and Beth would learn what it meant to lose something she never valued. But little did I know how far I was about to go, or the chain of events that would unfold from this moment. The air in the room felt electric, charged with betrayal and anger. I could hear the rapid thumping of my heart as I took a step closer to Brian, the man who had taken my wife from me for a mere thrill at a party. You think you can just waltz in here and take what's mine without any consequences? I seethed, the words barely able to escape my clenched teeth. Consequences? Brian chuckled, his laughter dripping with arrogance. You don't get it, do you? You're nothing but a footnote in her life now. This is what she wants, and she'll keep wanting it. You'd better accept that. He gestured dismissively, his casual demeanor infuriating me even more. Beth's face flickered with uncertainty, and for a brief moment, I saw a glimmer of regret in her eyes. But it vanished quickly, replaced by defiance. Mark, you need to stop making this a big deal. It was a mistake. A mistake? I interrupted, incredulous. No, Beth. A mistake is spilling coffee on your shirt. This was a choice. You made a choice to betray me, to let someone else into our life, into our bed. Her gaze faltered, but Brian was quick to interject, leaning into her, his hand casually resting on her shoulder. You see, she doesn't need your approval anymore, Mark. She's found someone who appreciates her, someone who knows how to have fun. His smirk widened, and I felt a rush of anger wash over me. I'll show you what fun really is. I shot back, my fists clenching at my sides. I glanced at Beth, whose face had turned pale. The once playful banter at the party now felt like a war cry, and the battlefield was set. Before I could think better of it, I lunged at Brian, driven by a primal instinct. The world around me faded into a blur as my fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling to the floor. The moment felt exhilarating, like I had regained some semblance of control over my shattered life. But as quickly as it began, the exhilaration faded, replaced by a sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach. I turned to Beth, whose expression was a mixture of shock and anger. You just made a huge mistake, Mark, she yelled, pushing my arm away as if I had just slapped her. This was supposed to be fun. It was supposed to be a break for us. A break? I spat, disbelief lacing my voice. You think cheating on me was a break? You think turning our lives into a twisted game is fun? Brian groaned as he picked himself up off the floor, rubbing his jaw. The anger in his eyes was evident, and I knew this was far from over. You're going to regret that, you know, he warned, dusting himself off with a smug grin. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. I shot back, my voice steady but filled with anger. You're a coward hiding behind a facade of bravado. With a scoff, Brian turned to Beth, wrapping his arm around her waist. Come on, babe. Let's get out of here. You don't need to be tied to this loser any longer. As they began to walk away, I felt a whirlwind of emotions, despair, anger, betrayal. I called after them. Beth! Is this really what you want? To throw away everything we built together? She hesitated for a moment, glancing back at me, but the moment passed quickly. I don't owe you anything anymore, Mark. You've pushed me away, she shouted before they disappeared from my view. The words hit me like a physical blow, and I felt the room spinning around me. It was surreal. My world had just crumbled, and in its place stood a gaping void filled with rage and disbelief. I stumbled back, the weight of reality crashing down like a heavy fog. I knew I had to act. I wouldn't let this humiliation go unanswered. I needed a plan, a way to turn the tables on the people who thought they could tear my life apart so casually. Determination surged through me as I realized that I wouldn't allow Beth and Brian to walk away without repercussions. I began to strategize my next moves, piecing together a plan that would ensure both of them understood the depth of my pain and betrayal. After Beth left with Brian, I felt an unsettling calm settle over me, as if I were a volcano waiting to erupt. I paced my empty apartment, the silence deafening. How could she betray me so easily? The laughter from the party echoed in my mind, a stark contrast to the fury bubbling within me. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed a strategy. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, staring at the screen like it held the key to my salvation. I needed allies, friends who could help me devise a plan. I sent a text to Jake, my closest friend since college. He'd always had my back, and I needed him now more than ever. Jake, we need to talk. Meet me at our spot in an hour. It's urgent. With that sent, I felt a flicker of hope. Jake had always been good at helping me see things clearly. He'd offer support, guidance, and maybe even some brutal honesty about my situation. An hour later, I found myself sitting in our usual booth at the diner, the smell of fries and burgers wafting through the air. When Jake arrived, his expression shifted from concern to curiosity as he slid into the seat across from me. What's going on, man? You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, his tone lightening the mood, but I knew he could sense the gravity of the situation. I leaned in, dropping my voice to a whisper. Beth cheated on me, Jake. With that guy Brian from the party. I found out tonight. It was horrific. I confronted them. Jake's eyes widened, and he leaned back in his seat. Whoa. Are you serious? What the hell? I can't believe she would do something like that. Neither can I replied, shaking my head. But it gets worse. Brian called me a cuckold, said I'd better accept it and stay out of their way. Like I'm just supposed to sit back and take this. Dude, that's messed up. What are you going to do? Jake asked, concern etched across his face. I'm not going to let them get away with this. I want to make them pay for what they've done, I said, my voice growing stronger. I need to show them that they can't just waltz into my life and destroy everything I've built. Are you thinking revenge? Jake raised an eyebrow, but I could see the gears turning in his mind. He understood my need for action. Not just revenge. I want to expose them, to let everyone know what they've done. I want Beth to see what she's lost and how little Brian truly respects her, I said, the plan forming in my mind like a twisted puzzle piece fitting into place. Jake nodded slowly, a grin creeping onto his face. All right, I'm in. We'll find a way to show them the consequences of their actions. But you've got to be careful, Mark. You don't want to go too far. Too far? I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. They've already crossed every line. I'm just leveling the playing field. We spent the next hour brainstorming ideas, each more outrageous than the last. I could almost feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, mixing with the anger that fueled my resolve. With every word, I felt a sense of empowerment building within me, an antidote to the feeling of helplessness that had plagued me since Beth's betrayal. When we finally wrapped up our conversation, I had a clear direction. I would gather evidence, not just to confront Beth but to dismantle the fantasy she had built with Brian. I'd unearth their secrets and expose their affair for all to see. As I left the diner, I felt a mix of dread and exhilaration. The storm was gathering, and I was ready to unleash my wrath. But I also understood that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life and my dignity. I drove home, the weight of my resolve pushing against the steering wheel. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It felt poetic in a way, like the calm before the inevitable storm. Little did I know, the chaos was just beginning. The next day, I woke up with a singular purpose driving me. The sun shone through the blinds, illuminating the chaos of my apartment, a physical representation of my mind. Clothes were strewn everywhere, remnants of a life that felt shattered. I needed to gather evidence. I needed to know the full extent of Beth's betrayal. I grabbed my phone and opened my social media, scrolling through the posts from the party. There had to be something, some indication of what had transpired. As I scrolled, my heart raced. There! A photo of Beth, laughing with Brian, her arm draped over his shoulder, a gleaming glass in her hand. The caption read, "Just living our best lives. Cheers to new adventures." Bottle with popping cork sparkles. My stomach twisted into knots. I felt anger surge, hot and consuming. I had to dig deeper. I knew I couldn't trust Beth, but I could trust her friends to spill the beans if the right question was asked. I decided to reach out to Lisa, one of Beth's closest friends who had always seemed genuine. I shot her a quick message. "Hey Lisa, can we talk? I need to ask you something important about the party." Minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Sure, what's up?" The chat progressed, and I could sense Lisa's hesitation through the text. Finally, I decided to lay it all out. "I know about Beth and Brian. I just need to know what happened." A long pause followed, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The dots were connecting, and I was prepared for whatever fallout awaited me. "Oh wow. I didn't think you knew. I was just going to say it was all harmless fun. Just a party thing." Harmless fun. Those words echoed in my mind like a taunt. Harmless? Lisa, she was with him. You know how that looks, right? Another pause, then the reply came, filled with a mixture of guilt and pity. "Look, Mark, I didn't think she'd take it that far. I thought it was just a little swapping, something exciting for a change. I didn't know she'd actually." "Actually what?" I murmured, frustration boiling. "I just thought you two were in a rut. I didn't think she'd want to actually go through with something, well, real." The conversation continued, and with every word, I felt my resolve harden. I needed proof, something tangible to show Beth how badly she had messed up. After convincing Lisa to send me any more photos from the party, I hung up, feeling a dark satisfaction creep in. I had information now, one more piece of the puzzle. That evening, Jake came over to help me sort through what I had found. I laid out my plan, detailing how I intended to confront Beth with the evidence. He listened intently, nodding at all the right moments, and as I shared my thoughts, I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "All right, man. This is a solid start. But we need to think about the confrontation. You want to make sure she doesn't see it coming," Jake said, leaning back against the couch, a thoughtful look on his face. "Yeah, I don't want to give her any chance to deflect or manipulate. I want her to feel the weight of her choices," I replied, my voice steady and sure. "Exactly. You need to catch her off guard. Maybe you can confront her when she's not expecting it. Set a trap of sorts," he suggested, his eyes gleaming with mischief. I nodded, feeling a rush of excitement at the thought of turning the tables on Beth. What if I invite her to a dinner? Keep it casual, but then drop the bombshell when she least expects it? That could work. Get her to let her guard down and then hit her with the reality of what she's done. I like it, Jake said, grinning. We spent the rest of the evening planning the dinner, mapping out the perfect location, a quiet restaurant where I could control the situation. I wanted to make sure that when I confronted Beth, I had the upper hand. As the night wore on, I felt an odd mix of anticipation and dread. The confrontation was looming, and I knew it was going to be brutal. But deep down, I also felt a flicker of hope. This was the moment I would reclaim my power and show Beth exactly who she was dealing with. That night, I barely slept, the weight of my plan pressing down on me. I kept replaying my confrontation in my mind, every possible scenario, every reaction she might have. And each time, I felt my anger surge anew. When morning came, I felt different. Stronger. It was time to take control. I texted Beth, keeping my message casual, just as we had planned. Hey, I was thinking we should grab dinner tonight, just the two of us. Let's talk. I hit send, and as the message disappeared into the digital ether, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. No matter how this played out, I was ready. The storm was approaching, and I was standing firm, prepared to face whatever chaos was about to ensue. The hours crawled by as I waited for the dinner to unfold. Every minute felt like an eternity, my nerves firing like an electric current through my veins. I couldn't shake the thought of what Beth would say when I confronted her. Would she deny it? Would she try to twist my words? Regardless, I was ready. I had the truth on my side. As the evening approached, I chose my outfit carefully. I wanted to strike the right balance between casual and assertive. I settled on a fitted black shirt and dark jeans, something that would make me feel confident. I was stepping into battle, and I wanted to look the part. When I arrived at the restaurant, my heart raced. The ambience was warm, but the tension in my gut was anything but comforting. I selected a secluded table in the corner, where I could keep my focus on Beth without distractions. I took a moment to breathe deeply, centering myself. Finally, the moment came. I saw Beth walk in, her hair cascading over her shoulders like a golden waterfall, a smile playing on her lips as she scanned the room. For a brief moment, I remembered how much I used to love that smile. But as she approached, it morphed into something more rehearsed, something that sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "Mark! This is such a nice surprise," she said, leaning in for a kiss on the cheek, her voice dripping with an enthusiasm that felt disingenuous. "Yeah, I thought it'd be good for us to catch up," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "How have you been?" "Oh, you know, just busy with work and everything. I've been thinking a lot about us," she said, her eyes darting around, avoiding mine for a moment. I noted her nervousness, a small victory for me. "Good to hear," I said, signaling the waiter for drinks, the tension thickening in the air. "I was hoping we could talk about some things tonight." "Of course. What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice chipper, but I could sense a crack in her facade. As we settled into our drinks, I steeled myself for the inevitable. I needed to strike while the iron was hot. "I saw some pictures from the party," I said, looking straight into her eyes. Her smile faltered slightly, and a flicker of uncertainty flashed across her face. "Oh, those were just silly photos. Everyone was having fun, you know how it is." "Fun? Is that what you call it?" "Because it looked like more than just fun to me," I replied, my voice steady but edged with the anger simmering beneath the surface. "What are you talking about?" she shot back defensively, her fingers fidgeting with her necklace. "You're being dramatic, Mark." "Dramatic? I don't think so. I saw you and Brian. The way you were leaning into him, laughing together. It didn't look like harmless fun to me," I pressed, feeling the adrenaline coursing through me. "Really? That's what you took away from it?" she scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "I can't believe you're bringing this up. It was just one night." "Just one night?" I echoed, leaning in closer. "That's all it takes, Beth. You don't just throw away our marriage because you wanted to feel desired for a night. Her face twisted into a mask of indignation. You don't understand. You've been so distant, so wrapped up in your own world. I thought you didn't care anymore. The audacity of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. So you decided to just sleep with another man? You thought that would fix things? Mark, it was a mistake. I was feeling lonely, she exclaimed, her voice rising. You always choose work over me. I wanted something exciting. Exciting? So you'd rather betray me than communicate? That's your solution? I shot back, anger boiling over. You think you can just dismiss this as a mistake and we'll move on? Her defiance seemed to shift into something else. Fear, maybe? She was grasping for control, and I could see her composure slipping. Listen, I didn't mean for it to happen. I thought it would be fun, just a swap. It's not like it meant anything, she pleaded, her tone softening as she reached for my hand. I pulled away, feeling the heat of betrayal coursing through my veins. Not mean anything? You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I thought we were a team, Beth. You've destroyed everything. She fell silent for a moment, and I could see her calculating, searching for the right words to turn the tide back in her favor. I'm sorry. I really am. Can't we just forget this and move forward? She said, her voice tinged with desperation. Forget? Move forward? The audacity of her request infuriated me. You don't get to decide that. Not after what you did. In that moment, I felt something shift inside me. I realized I had been handling this all wrong, caught up in the whirlwind of emotion. I needed to reclaim my power, to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. No more lies, Beth. No more excuses. I deserve better than a half-hearted apology. You need to understand the gravity of your actions. I locked my gaze onto hers, letting the silence linger, allowing her to feel the weight of her choices. The restaurant buzzed around us, but in that moment, it was just the two of us, standing at the precipice of our crumbling marriage. The silence hung heavily between us, charged with an electric tension that felt both suffocating and liberating. I watched Beth's face, a canvas of shifting emotions, from defiance to regret. It was as if I could see the gears in her mind turning, calculating her next move. Her breath quickened, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of pity. But that spark was quickly snuffed out by the bitter taste of betrayal lingering on my tongue. Mark, please, she finally said, her voice quavering. I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a stupid mistake. I thought we could laugh it off. Laugh it off? I shot back, incredulous. You think I can just pretend that this never happened? You shattered my trust, Beth. Trust is the foundation of everything we built together, and you've stomped all over it. Her eyes narrowed, and she leaned forward, desperate to reclaim some ground. I didn't want it to end up like this. I was just trying to feel something again. You've been so focused on work, so distant. I felt invisible. The words stung, but they were also an excuse. I could see the cracks in her armor as her voice wavered, but I wouldn't let her manipulate my emotions. So you chose to seek validation from another man? You think I'm going to stand here and accept that as a valid reason? I was lonely, Mark, she exclaimed, frustration bubbling over. You never listen to me anymore. You don't see me. Seeing you? You think sleeping with someone else is going to fix that? I countered, the anger rising in my chest. You could have talked to me. We could have worked through this together, but instead you made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. As I leaned back, I caught sight of a couple at the next table, glancing over with curious eyes. The judgment stung, and I suddenly felt exposed. I pushed my chair back and stood up, the decision forming clearly in my mind. I can't do this. Not like this. What do you mean? Beth's voice wavered as panic crept into her tone. I'm done talking, Beth. You've made your choices, and I need to think clearly. I can't do that here, I said firmly, feeling the resolve settle into my bones. I turned and walked away, leaving her stunned at the table. The cool night air hit me like a splash of cold water as I stepped outside. I needed a moment to breathe, to regroup. I walked aimlessly for a few blocks, the weight of my emotions dragging me down like an anchor. Anger and hurt fought for dominance within me, but I felt a flicker of clarity. This was my turning point. I knew I had to get my thoughts straight. I needed to map out my next steps, not just for myself but for the shattered pieces of my life that lay scattered like autumn leaves. I ended up at a small diner, one I used to visit during my college days. The comforting smell of coffee and fries wrapped around me as I slid into a booth. I ordered a coffee, and as I waited, I took a moment to reflect on everything that had just happened. What had started as a dinner to reconnect had turned into a battlefield. Beth was not the woman I had married. The woman I knew would have fought for us, not sought comfort in another man's arms. I was left with a feeling of betrayal that clawed at my insides. Then, the weight of the betrayal began to morph into a fire igniting within me. I thought of Brian, the man who had crossed every line and disrespected everything I held dear. The image of him laughing with Beth, whispering sweet nothings into her ear, turned my stomach. I pulled out my phone and stared at it, contemplating my next move. Should I call a lawyer? Should I gather evidence? The very thought of Beth denying everything again made my blood boil. But more importantly, I needed to make it clear that I wouldn't be a passive participant in this mess. I had to take control. As I sipped my coffee, my mind raced with plans, strategies. I felt a sense of empowerment creeping in. Beth might have thought she could shatter our lives without consequence, but she was about to learn how wrong she was. I couldn't let her have the last word. I wouldn't allow her to dictate the terms of our relationship. With renewed determination, I set my phone down and made a mental note. I would confront her again, but this time, it would be on my terms. I wasn't just going to be the hurt husband begging for explanations. No, I would be the man reclaiming his power. As I left the diner, the darkness felt less suffocating. I was stepping into the unknown, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. I would not allow this betrayal to define me. I had fought for my marriage once, but now I was ready to fight for myself. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that mirrored the darkness creeping into my heart. I drove back to our house, the familiar streets feeling foreign and hostile. Every turn seemed to echo Beth's laughter, the memories clawing at my resolve. I parked the car, taking a moment to steady myself before entering the place that had once felt like a sanctuary. Stepping inside, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia mixed with betrayal. The air felt thick with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. I found Beth sitting on the couch, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and for a brief moment, I almost faltered. But I remembered the fire burning within me, the promise I made to myself not to back down. "Mark, I'm so glad you're home," she said, attempting to bridge the chasm between us. "We need to talk." "Talk?" I scoffed, closing the door behind me. "You mean you want to explain how you thought betraying me was just a fun night? I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she cried, her voice cracking. "It was a mistake, Mark. I love you." "Love?" I shot back, my anger boiling over. "You don't get to throw that word around after what you've done. You don't get to claim love when you've spent the night with another man." Her face fell, and the defiance that had fueled her earlier seemed to dissolve. "I know I messed up, but can't we just move past this? I want to fix things." "Fix things?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think a few tears and some empty promises can repair the damage? You've made your choice, and now you need to deal with the consequences." She looked desperate, pleading with me to see her side. "I was feeling lost, Mark. You've been so focused on work, so distant. I thought." "Thought what? That you could find solace in another man's arms? That I wouldn't care?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You were too caught up in your own needs to see how much you were hurting me. You betrayed me, Beth, and there's no coming back from that without consequences." "Consequences?" she echoed, the realization hitting her like a brick. "What do you mean?" I leaned in closer, my voice low and steady. I'm done being the passive husband who sits back and takes the hits. You think you can just sweep this under the rug? No. I'm taking control of my life, and you're going to face the fallout from your actions. Beth's eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker across her face. Mark, please. Don't say things you don't mean. We can work this out, I promise. I stepped back, needing distance from the chaos that had erupted. Work what out, Beth? There's nothing left to salvage here. You've already chosen your path, and now you'll face the consequences. I'll be seeking legal counsel tomorrow. Her expression morphed into anger, and she shot back. You think that's going to fix things? You'll just end up hurting yourself more. No, I said firmly, standing my ground. I'll be protecting myself from you and your lies. I refuse to let you manipulate me anymore. I refuse to be the fool. For a moment, we stood there, staring at each other, the reality of our situation crashing down like waves against jagged rocks. I could feel my heart racing, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I was no longer the man lost in the fog of betrayal. I was a man taking a stand. Mark, I can change, she pleaded, her voice trembling. Just give me another chance. Let's go to couples therapy. I swear I'll make it right. But the moment I looked into her eyes, I could see the cracks beginning to form. This wasn't the woman I had married. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger, a facade built on deceit. You had your chance, Beth. You blew it. As I turned to leave the room, I felt a sense of clarity washing over me. I was done with the games, the manipulation. I had endured too much, and now it was time for me to prioritize my own well-being. Before I reached the door, I paused, taking one last look at her. I hope you're ready for what's coming, because I won't let you walk all over me anymore. This time, I'm the one who's in control. With that, I stepped out, closing the door firmly behind me. The night air was crisp, the darkness no longer feeling suffocating but rather liberating. I was reclaiming my power, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As I drove away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was a long road ahead, but I was no longer the victim. I was a man determined to rewrite my narrative, to turn the page on a chapter filled with betrayal and deceit. The drive felt like a blur, the streetlights flickering past as I wrestled with a cocktail of emotions. Relief washed over me with each mile I put between myself and Beth, yet it was tinged with a raw, gnawing pain that refused to let go. I found myself heading toward the motel where I'd checked in. The solitude it offered a balm for my restless mind. Once inside my room, I collapsed onto the bed, the weight of the day finally catching up to me. The stark walls of the motel seemed to close in, yet I welcomed the solitude. No Beth, no pretense, just me and the lingering echo of betrayal. I glanced around the room, noting the dullness, the unmade bed, and the flickering TV in the corner. It felt surreal that this was where I was, yet it felt oddly liberating. This was my space now, away from her chaos. I reached for my phone, scrolling through contacts until I landed on Jack, my closest friend. He had been a sounding board through many ups and downs, and I knew he would provide the support I desperately needed right now. I hit dial, and he picked up on the second ring. Mark! Man, it's good to hear from you. What's up? Hey, Jack. Can we meet? I really need to talk. Of course. I'll be over in 20. I hung up, my heart pounding. Talking to Jack would help, but I was apprehensive about sharing the details. It wasn't just about Beth's betrayal. It was about how I felt so blindsided, so utterly shattered by the woman I thought I knew. What would he say? How would he react? 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door, and I let Jack in. He was a tall guy, rugged, with an easy smile that could brighten the darkest of days. He took one look at me and immediately sensed something was off. Dude, you look terrible, he said, concern etched on his face. What happened? I gestured for him to sit, running a hand through my hair. It's Beth. She's been unfaithful. Jack's expression shifted from concern to shock. Wait, what? Are you serious? I nodded, my throat tight. She thought going to a key-swapping party was harmless fun. Just one night. But I found out about it, and it destroyed everything. He leaned back, processing my words. Wow, man. That's brutal. What did she say? I took a deep breath, letting the memories flood back. She tried to play it off like it was no big deal, like I should just forgive her and move on. But how can I trust her again after this? Jack rubbed the back of his neck, deep in thought. That's a tough situation. I don't know if I could just forgive and forget. Trust is everything in a relationship. Exactly. And she's acting like it was a small mistake. I don't even recognize her anymore. The woman I married wouldn't have done this. I'm really sorry, man, he said. What do you plan to do now? I'm talking to a lawyer tomorrow. I can't keep living like this, hoping she'll change. It's time I focus on me. I could feel the fire in my belly reigniting. I was determined to reclaim my life. Jack nodded, support shining in his eyes. That's the right move. You deserve better, and you know it. As we talked late into the night, I found comfort in sharing my feelings, in acknowledging the pain and the anger. With every word, the weight on my shoulders lessened. Jack listened without judgment, offering insights and advice that reminded me I wasn't alone in this. Eventually, I grew weary, and the exhaustion caught up with me. Thanks for being here, man, I said, sincerity dripping from my voice. I don't think I could have faced this without you. Any time, brother. Just remember, you're stronger than you think. This is your chance to find yourself again. As Jack left, I felt a surge of determination coursing through me. Tomorrow would be a turning point. I was taking my life back. I would confront the reality of my marriage and make decisions that honored my worth. I laid back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. I replayed the events of the day, the confrontation, the weight of betrayal, and the spark of hope igniting within me. I thought of Beth and the choices she made, but I also thought of the man I wanted to become. A man unafraid to stand up for himself, to demand respect and loyalty. The night wrapped around me, cocooning me in solitude. I closed my eyes, knowing that in the morning, I would begin to reshape my life. I would embrace the pain, confront the darkness, and emerge stronger than ever before. This was my story now, and I intended to write it on my own terms.